that's the burden that we as artists can carry if we choose to use our works to empower other people, to enlighten people, to help them learn what's going on around them if they're not aware. My name is Dalia Perryman from Miami, Florida. I'm a visual and performing artist as well as an activist, humanitarian, and advocate. Black art has been a part of every major social movement in history, and I offer for your perusal the Black Arts Movement and the Harlem Renaissance. Art intersects with activism in many ways in my own personal career, and I hope to and try to pattern my life after some of the greats such as those we just lost, like Sidney Poitier. I've used my art to spark conversations around serious topics such as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland. I do that in art festivals, in individual art pieces and shows that I participate in, as well as in my poetry and my writing. And it just naturally comes up as issues arise and there's things that I'm passionate about. I try to speak about those issues within my work, or I move to speak about those issues within my work. I'm an activist. First off, everything I do is art. Every topic that I speak about, I try to make it align with some issue that I am working on in my activism and my advocacy. I try and make my art align with that. When I create a work of art that's driven by an issue that's currently happening in the news or in our society, I try to evoke emotion from people who see the work. Because if I cause them to feel a certain way about the work, they will be more apt to work on issues pertaining to that work. I don't believe social movements would be as successful without arts, primarily because the arts often drive work that comes afterwards. People use individual works of art to promote movements. They use specific poems to quote in marches. They use songs during speeches. The arts show up in all aspects of that work. When I think of Black arts, primarily at this period of time, I think about the artists who made images of George Floyd. If there were not artists who provided images of his face and stories about his life, the only image we would have of George Floyd would be the image of his life being taken. The arts and social movements go hand in hand, not just in Black arts, but in arts in general. If you think about it, the artists of all fields are the journalists of each generation. Each generation has produced artists who have cataloged what has gone on in history through various types of arts, whether it was Picasso thinking about war in art in general, or Kathy Kollowitz about poverty in general. In our categories, we have people like Gordon Parks, who spoke about what was going on in the civil rights movement. We had James Baldwin. We had Dick Gregory. All of these people brought to light what was going on in our communities. And yes, we knew what was going on in our communities, but they allowed it to reach a broader audience. I think the biggest way to spark conversations utilizing art is to first know what's going on. If you don't know what's going on in your community, in the globe, in your state, in politics, you don't have anything to talk about. You can't create art around something you know nothing about. Otherwise, you're just making up stories. I would like to focus on two particular time periods. One in modern history, revolving around the death of George Floyd, specifically. You did not see images of George Floyd that were not art drawn on the sidewalk or things pertaining to Black Lives Matter, in addition to images of his actual death. Art gave a way to humanize him as opposed to the image of him in his passing. Another time in our history that is important in my eyes, that demonstrates what artists did to move the arts movement, move the civil rights movement, is actually the civil rights movement, where people like Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte were famous for their work on screen. But one thing that was not known about artists such as Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte is that not only did they march with Martin Luther King, they also helped pay bail to get certain activists out of jail. They funded portions of the movement, and a lot of people are not aware of that. So they were active both behind the scenes and on the screen. As we found out recently, if you were listened at all after Sidney Poitier's passing, we know that the famous scene in The Heat of the Night, where he is slapped by a racist person, did not end with him slapping him back. It ended in the script with him walking away. He insisted on a physical response that has now gone down in history.
Let me understand this. You two came here to question me?
Well, your attitudes, Mr. Endicott, your points of view are a matter of record. Some people, well, let us say the people who work for Mr. Colbert might reasonably regard you as the person least likely to mourn his passing. We were just trying to clarify some of the evidence. Was Mr. Colbert ever in this greenhouse, say last night about midnight?
Gillespie? Yeah. You saw it.
I saw it.
Well, what are you going to do about it?
I don't know.
I think the best way for artists to tell their stories is to take a stand or a stance primarily before doing anything else. You cannot speak through your art if you don't have something to say, if you don't have something worth saying. First, I would ask artists to be engaged in their communities and find out what is actually going on so that they can speak on things, and don't speak on something that you don't deeply believe in, so that when you do have something to say, people listen to you. I would also suggest that organizations support the artists who are doing the work of telling our stories and putting our stories on the front, whether that be in advocating for those artists, standing by those artists as they take difficult stances, if it is through showcasing those works, funding those works, or providing opportunities for larger scale works to be seen. I guess those are a couple of the ways that you can help an artist advance in activism. I have a couple of street painting festivals coming up. I'm consulting with a couple of different cities in relation to work that they are doing. I have an arts book that I'm trying to put together right now. I'm trying to get that published. I'm doing a girls empowerment arts advocacy program in Darfur with an organization called IACT. I hope that it helps empower these young women to move forward in their lives in full power and knowledge of what they want to do with their lives, and hopefully it helps them change their portion of the world and the globe. This is Dalia Perryman, the Black Dahlia. Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more about my work, you can find me on blackdahliaarts.com or on social media as Black Dahlia Art. Thank you.